On the 6th of September, just a few weeks ago, two LA-based models named Nichole Coates and Maleesa Mooney were officially reported missing by their respective families after they had failed to respond to their messages for a number of days. Concerned for their well-being, the LAPD decided to head over to their apartments, starting with Nichole's, where they would soon discover her lifeless body sprawled out on her very own bed. No evidence was initially found which proved any foul play, but that is until 2 days later, when the police would discover a second body, which was that of Maleesa Mooney, who was once again found deceased in her own apartment. At this moment in time, no official links have been made between the two cases. However, with their extremely similar profiles, accompanied by the suspicious circumstances their bodies were found in, has led many to wonder, could there be a serial killer out on the streets of Los Angeles who is preying on female African American models? Nichole "Nikki" Coates was born in the early 90s to her mother Sharon, and from what I was able to gather, she had a relatively normal upbringing. However, as with all childhoods, it did come with its fair share of problems. Her parents eventually divorced a few years later, but this didn't mean that they weren't both incredibly supportive of their daughter's career and well-being throughout her life from adolescence to adulthood. Nichole worked as an assistant sales manager for an LA brand called Hatch Collective, but in her spare time she also modeled professionally, with aspirations to make this a full-time job one day. In 2015, she received her bachelor's degree in fashion merchandising from California State University in Long Beach, which was where she developed her love of all things fashion. According to online sources, Nichole was not known to have been married at any point in her life. However, she was certainly open to a relationship, as she confessed to her friends and family. Unfortunately, there isn't much more to say about Nichole before her disappearance, as her family have kept most of these details to themselves for now. But there is currently no evidence that she had any children, and therefore we can assume she was living a thriving single life, as she was heavily focused on her career and future aspirations of becoming a full-time model. However, all of these dreams would come to a sudden and unfortunate end when Nichole's lifeless body was soon discovered. On the 4th of September earlier this month, Nichole Coates was spending the evening with her friends when she suddenly announced her plans for the week, which included a date with a mystery man. The next few days were nothing out of the ordinary, but as the date quickly approached, Nichole continued to be excited by all accounts. Nothing is known about any specific plans for the date itself, other than that it was scheduled for Friday the 8th of September. However, when the date came and passed, her friends and family were concerned that she hadn't responded to any of their calls or messages. Upon further inspection, they then realized that the last known communication from Nichole was actually on Wednesday the 6th of September, meaning it had now been a few days since anybody had heard from the young model. This was extremely unusual behavior for Nichole, as she rarely ever went a day without speaking to her family. So with the situation escalating, they decided to officially report her missing to the LAPD. On Sunday the 10th of September, the police agreed to perform a welfare check on Nichole at her apartment in downtown Los Angeles. At first, they didn't know what to expect, but given that Nichole was a model, I would imagine they likely suspected she was busy with her extravagant lifestyle. However, after repeatedly knocking on the door with no response from the young woman, the LAPD then decided they had no other option than to break it down, concerned for her well-being. They slowly searched the apartment, prepared for anything, until one of the officers approached the bedroom door. At this point, we do not know if the door was open or closed, but what we do know is that this officer was faced with a horrifying sight. I will try to spare some of the gorier details, but essentially lying lifeless on her very own bed was Nichole, with her leg up in a kicking position, surrounded by her own blood. Later that day, the police announced that they were investigating the case of Nichole Coates as a potential homicide. However, they have still not officially declared the cause of death. The suspicious circumstances that Nichole's body was found in understandingly led her mother Sharon to have some extremely passionate views about the situation, later being quoted as saying, "This is senseless, and I want some answers because my daughter is gone and it's not fair. I want everybody to find out who did this to her. She shouldn't be gone. I believe it was murder. I really do. The case continued to be investigated by the police, but initially they were unable to provide any further updates on what had happened or who was responsible. Well, that is until 2 days later, when there was a sudden break in the case. On Tuesday the 12th of September, the LAPD were stunned when a disturbingly similar incident would suddenly burst onto their radar. Just 2 days after the discovery of Nichole's body, another young model named Maleesa Mooney was also found deceased inside of her own apartment. But the similarities didn't stop there, as Maleesa's apartment was located just 1 mile away from Nichole's in downtown LA. So within a span of less than 48 hours, the LAPD had found themselves with 2 murder inquiries with victims which had almost identical profiles. Both Nichole and Maleesa were black women in their 30s, Nichole being 32 and Maleesa being 31. They were both models by trade and lived in downtown LA, just 1 mile apart from each other. They were also both single with no children and died under extremely suspicious circumstances in their own homes, just 2 days apart. But despite the shockingly similar characteristics of these cases, the police were initially unable to link the 2 victims together, and so to this day, they claim that there is not a shred of evidence which may point at a potential serial killer. It is currently unknown if they have entirely ruled out the possibility, or if they are just being cautious about what they announce to the public. But as it stands, we are no closer to finding out the truth. So with that, let's get into some of the potential theories. Now, for the first theory, although the LAPD seem to have no evidence of Nichole's death being linked to Maleesa's, I still think it is worth diving into the idea of a potential serial killer in LA, as in the last few months there have been several cases of people disappearing in California, all of which are either still under investigation or have ended in tragedy. So based on this, I think it would be useful to look into how these cases could be related, as we may be able to bring some more insight to the table. Now firstly, I think it's pretty clear that these 2 women have extremely similar profiles, which would lead anyone to assume they must be linked. But could there be any other less superficial evidence which hasn't already been discussed? Well, as I previously mentioned, both women were single 30-somethings living in LA, which immediately puts an image in your mind of a professional, well-rounded person that is likely looking for a mature relationship. We know that Nichole was planning to go on a date with someone during her disappearance, but we don't know how it went or who she was meeting. Could this mystery man have potentially agreed to meet with Maleesa a few days after Nichole? It's certainly possible, as both women were single, and given that they lived in the same area and were of a similar age, they likely would have been choosing from the same dating pool. Of course, we have no evidence that Maleesa was planning to go on a date with anyone at this time, but just because she didn't say anything to her friends and family doesn't mean she wasn't planning a date with somebody and just kept it a secret. But either way, if this was the case, it would seem to be a very easy step to say a potential serial killer may be currently out there on the streets of LA, looking for other young aspiring models to turn into his next victim. It's a truly harrowing thought, but one which should certainly be taken seriously by the police, as if there is somebody out there, it's only a matter of time before they strike again. However, just for the sake of argument, let's say that these cases are not related and it's simply a coincidence that they share so many details. What else could have happened to these young women? Well, Nichole was found in a defensive position with blood surrounding her body, which immediately screams homicide. But why would anybody want to hurt her? By all accounts, she was an incredibly selfless person, whilst also maintaining a thriving career in both modelling and sales. So could the culprit perhaps be a disgruntled work colleague or customer? It's very easy to fall into the trap of blaming this mystery man she met on her date, but it could certainly be possible that her killer was somebody she knew. In fact, most murder cases are actually linked to people that the victim knew in real life. So statistically speaking, this theory is definitely worth investigating further. Perhaps Nichole rejected a customer or even colleague who was obsessed with her, and after finding out she went on a date with another man, he decided to exact his revenge. Again, I have no concrete evidence for this, but it's an idea worth exploring in my opinion. But if this was the case and we discovered that Nichole's death was completely unrelated to Maleesa's, What could have happened to the other young woman? Well, LA is an extremely heavily populated area with thousands of aspiring models and actors all over the place, just waiting to be victims. So perhaps Maleesa was simply the victim of another person who chose to take her life for completely different reasons. Little is known about Maleesa, however, one very interesting fact about her is that she is the sister of a Guyanese pop star and Instagram influencer named Jordan Pauline. At this time, there is nothing linking Maleesa's relation to Jordan as a possible motive for her death, but it must be said that with celebrity status comes danger, and it's very possible that Jordan's star power may have had something to do with Maleesa's strange and abrupt passing. Perhaps Jordan had a stalker who accidentally tracked down the wrong apartment and ended up at Maleesa's home instead, and then maybe one thing led to another, where he decided that taking her life was the only option. I understand this is a truly gruesome possibility, but in my opinion, it's something that should definitely be looked into by the LAPD. Now, of course, there are multiple other plausible explanations for how both Nichole and Maleesa lost their lives, including self-infliction, which at this moment cannot be completely ruled out. But I think given the similar circumstances of these cases, we are led to a rather bleak reality that these two incredible women may not be the only victims. My worst fear is that any day now we will hear about a third victim, which will surely confirm the existence of an LA serial killer. But for now, all we can do is wait for further information from the LAPD, so in the meantime, please leave your own theories in the comments below, and hopefully we can help solve this mystery together. Anyway, with that, I think I'll leave this video here, but thank you so much for watching and make sure to subscribe for further updates. Just before I go, I'd like to also quickly apologise for my voice in this video. I've been struggling with a cold this past week, so safe to say it's been quite difficult to record. But with the cases I cover on this channel being so time sensitive, I realise that every day I don't post is another day these victims go without receiving the justice they deserve, so hopefully you didn't find this video too difficult to watch. But either way, I really appreciate your continued support for the channel, and if you do have the time, make sure to check out my previous videos on screen now, where I've covered some other equally mysterious cases.